My name is Hugh. I'm a videographer with Falco Litigation Services. Today's date is March 13, 2019, and the time is 10:59 a.m. This videotape deposition is being held at the Marriott, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. In the matter of national prescription opiate litigation, the deponent is Hugh O'Neill. All appearances are noted on the stenographic record. With the court reporter, please administer the oath to the witness.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill, thank you for being here today. You must be a very important guy, is that right?
I don't believe that, but I appreciate that.
Okay, well, in the room today, we've got two lawyers from Ropes & Gray, right?
That's true, yes.
Okay, and there was a man here earlier who I think is going to come back named Mark Casey, is that right?
That is correct.
Who is he?
He's the general counsel of the company.
Okay, is he your boss?
No.
Okay, what is his relationship to you in the hierarchy?
Colleagues.
Okay. Are you at the same level that he is?
I am.
Okay, what is your job with Mallinckrodt today?
I am currently the executive vice president, chief commercial officer for the organization for the branded business
Okay, for what organization?
for Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals.
Okay. What is Mallinckrodt PLC?
Mallinckrodt PLC is the, if I understand correctly, I believe it's the holding company for the other subsidiaries of the organization.
Okay. And what organization actually pays your salary?
Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals, Mallinckrodt.
Is that Mallinckrodt PLC, or do you know?
I do not know.
Okay. Do you receive a paycheck, or is it direct deposited?
It is direct deposited.
Let me hand you what we're going to mark as exhibit number 1. And it is a document Bates numbered MNK-T1_000-859-2808 through 2810. And this is, there you go. And here's, could you pass that to the witness? Thanks.
Take your time.
What we've handed you is Exhibit 1, I'll represent to you, was produced to us through Mallinckrodt's lawyers. And it appears to be your CV, but if you take a minute to look that over and confirm that for me, if you would.
It is my CV.
Okay. Did you prepare this document?
I did.
When did you last update this?
Don't know the exact date, sometime in 2018.
And for what reason did you update this document?
My title was changed in May of 2018.
Was that a promotion?
It was.
Okay. Were you looking for a job at that time?
I was not.
Are you looking for a job currently?
I am not.
When was the last time you were actively looking for a job?
5 years ago when I joined the company, 5.5 years ago.
Okay. Okay, so it has you listed here as the Executive Vice President, Chief Commercial Officer, based in Bedminster, New Jersey. That's your current role?
That is my current role.
Okay, and what do? You list some bullet points here, 6 bullet points of description of your job. Are those all accurate?
Objection.
Yeah, let me ask that again. You list 6 bullet points here under your title as Executive Vice President, Chief Commercial Officer. Are those descriptions accurate?
Objection.
What I do in the job, I have responsibility for the entire branded business currently, which is made up of two groups. One is a hospital business and one is an autoimmune rare disease business.
In autoimmune, what was it?
Rare disease.
Okay, looking at Exhibit 1, is everything that's set forth in Exhibit 1 accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Objection.
It is my CV, yes.
Okay, is the information contained within Exhibit 1 accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Objection.
It is.
Let's go back to the time when you started at Mallinckrodt. That was in 2013, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, how did you come to work for Mallinckrodt?
Through an executive recruiter.
At the time that you, immediately prior to moving to Mallinckrodt, you worked for a company called Sanofi, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Who did you interview with at Mallinckrodt when you first joined the company?
I interviewed with a panel of individuals, including members of the board of directors, as well as members of the executive committee at the time.
Okay, do you remember any names?
Ian Watkins, who's the head of HR for us at the time, Matt Harbaugh, who was the chief financial officer, Mel Booth, who's the chairman of the board, a couple other members of the board, and also Mark Trudeau.
Okay, when you say board, what do you mean by that?
It's the board of directors of the company,
Do you know of what company?
Mallinckrodt.
Is that Mallinckrodt PLC?
I don't know whether it's Mallinckrodt. It's the way I think about it is Mallinckrodt.
You think of it all as one company?
Yeah. Well, I think about it as Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals, and then the way I think about it is there's subsidiaries attached to it, but the board is the board that helps steer the company Mallinckrodt. Now, whether it's PLC or not, I don't really know.
Okay, and does the board make all of the material decisions for the pharmaceuticals business?
Objection.
The board is there to help us strategically set the direction of the company and to challenge our strategy and to think about how we're actually building the business. But the operational piece of the business is actually run by myself and an operating committee, which consists of finance and some of the manufacturing folks.
Okay, and are you talking about in the present time or during the entire
During that time. During that time and the present time.
Okay, so during the entire time that you've been working for Mallinckrodt, what you just described was the role of the board of directors?
Objection.
As I understand it, yes.
Okay. Were you directly answerable to the board of directors in all of your positions at Mallinckrodt?
Objection.
I reported directly into the CEO of the company at the time, and I still do. Mark Trudeau, who's the CEO of the organization. I'm a member of the executive committee. The executive committee has responsibility directly through Mark and to the board.
Okay. Okay, so let's go back and talk about the time 2013 to 2015 when you were the senior vice president and president of specialty pharmaceuticals. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What were you senior vice president of?
I had responsibility for all of the businesses that the company had at that point in time, which included a small branded piece of the business, as well as the generic business and the active pharmaceutical ingredients or API business. The only businesses that I did not have responsibility for were the imaging business, which was the contrast media and the nuclear imaging business.
Okay. And that has since been sold?
That is correct, yes.
And in your role as senior vice president and president of specialty pharmaceuticals, you were answerable to Mr. Trudeau?
I reported directly to Mark, and I was responsible for the management of the business on a daily basis, yes.
What was the line between a decision that you could make and a decision that you would need Mr. Trudeau to make for you at the time when you were senior vice president and president of specialty pharmaceuticals?
Objection.
So the daily operation of the business was my responsibility. That includes the management of the budget, that includes the delivery of the sales targets, the operation plan, the manufacturing plan, and we did that through an operating committee, also known as an OC. The operating committee was chaired by myself, as well as the gentleman who was responsible for manufacturing and the financial head. And we ran the business and made the daily operational decisions. Mark's role was not a member of the OC. He was not a part of that. Mark's role was more around the overall strategic direction of the company, policy issues, those type of things. But the running of the business on a daily basis was run by the OC.
Okay. And for what decisions would you need input from the board of directors?
It was the normal, probably once or twice a year, it was strategic plan. So when we reviews the strategic plan of the company, where we're going, why we're going there, the choices that we think we should make, the overall budget of the company, and any specific updates as it relates to mergers and acquisitions and business development targets.
Okay. There was a time when the company decided to no longer promote Zartemis. Is that true?
That is correct, yes.
Who made that decision?
The operating committee.
Did you need to get approval from Mr. Trudeau for that?
Objection.
I informed him, but the decision was the operating committee's decision.
Was the decision already made by the time you informed Mr. Trudeau?
I don't recall the timing of when we had the conversation, whether it was before or after.
Okay. Did Mr. Trudeau have input into the decision as to whether to continue promoting Zartemis?
Objection.
Mark has always had an opinion, but the decision ultimately was the operating committee's.
Okay. Was were the people on the operating committee, did they change at any point during the time 2013 to 2015?
I don't think so. I think it was myself, the head of manufacturing, which is Dr. Frank Scholes, and the CFO at the time, which was Matt Harbaugh. There were meetings where Matt wouldn't attend and he'd send a surrogate, which is usually the head of his financial group. But those were the three core.
Who was the head of Mr. Harbaugh's financial group?
Actually, at the time, it changed. Trying to remember. George Kegler was one, and then also Barbara Bodum, who came in later.
Is he talking too fast for you?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's why
please
she's-
tell me if I'm speaking too fast, just let me know.
That's fine. It's
a New
fine for
York
me.
thing.
She's trying to take it all down, so just want to make sure we're not getting ahead of her. Okay. Have you ever given a deposition before?
I have.
On how many occasions?
I'm sorry?
On how many occasions?
2, 3? I can't remember the exact number, but I've done it before.
Okay. In what context did you give those depositions?
Previous professional issues related to litigation in my previous organization, as well as personally on an item as well.
Okay, let's talk about the professional ones. Have you given a deposition since you started working at Mallinckrodt?
I have not.
Who were you working for at the time you gave a deposition?
Sanofi.
Okay, and what was the nature of that lawsuit?
At the time, I was the head of the Canadian business for Sanofi, and we had a partnership with a company that did not end the way that the partner that wanted it to end, and we terminated that agreement, and it ended up resulting in a lawsuit, and there were depositions attached to it.
Okay, where was that lawsuit filed, do you know?
I don't remember.
In the U.S.?
I don't recall. I believe so, but I'm not sure.
What was the name of that partner?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I don't recall.
What type of business was Sanofi in partnership with that business?
It was if I remember correctly, it was a pain cream ointment that was to be used for osteoarthritis patients, and we ended the partnership because of the lack of successful development of the product.
Okay. Do you have a ballpark on the time that you gave that deposition?
Objection.
I don't recall.
You were with Sanofi from 2003 through 2013? Do
That is correct.
you remember if it was toward the beginning or toward the end of your time there?
It was towards the end.
Were you, was the deposition during the time that you were general manager / president of Sanofi Canada?
It was actually after that.
Okay. So sometime in 2012 or 2013?
Yeah, it might even be after I left the organization. I don't recall exactly the dates, but
Okay. And you mentioned a personal deposition involving a personal matter. Without giving me too much detail, what was the nature of that?
it was divorce proceedings.
Okay. Was that here in New Jersey?
It was
What time frame was that?
06, 07.
In what county, if you, God bless you. In what county
Morris County.
do you live in New Jersey now?
I split my time between Missouri and New Jersey.
Is that a arrangement that you have plans to change at some point?
It's a temporary arrangement. Ultimately, we'll move back to New Jersey, but we have not done that yet.
Do you have a time frame for when you plan to move here full-time?
Not particularly. Sometime within the next probably 6 to 12 months.
Okay. So let's go back to the time when you were senior vice president and president of specialty pharmaceuticals at Mallinckrodt. During that time, you were responsible for the company's opioids business, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
That includes both the branded opioids and the generic opioids?
That is correct, yes.
Did that also include the active pharmaceutical ingredients business?
It did.
With respect to the active pharmaceutical ingredients business, where did those raw materials come from?
Objection.
I don't really recall the exact location. I know that there were raw materials that came in for processing API. I believe some of them came from outside the country. I don't remember exactly where.
Okay, how did those materials get into the United States?
Objection.
They got through normal clearance through the DEA and through shipping into the company, into the country, and we were authorized to receive the product and then manufacture it.
Okay. At the time, did Mallinckrodt have any businesses at the shipping end of those products? In other words, did Mallinckrodt have businesses overseas that imported the materials into the United States?
I don't recall. I don't recall that.
And when I'm talking about raw materials, what are the raw materials that went into the API business during the time that you were the president of the Specialty Pharmaceuticals Division?
Objection.
So the API business consisted of a couple of different major forms. One was acetaminophen, which, as you know, is a raw form of Tylenol, which we manufactured, as well as controlled substances such as hydrocodone, oxycodone, and others that were used in our finished products, as well as supplied to other potential manufacturers.
Okay. And so the raw materials, let's talk about for hydrocodone and oxycodone, what were the raw materials that went into those products?
Objection.
I don't really recall. I mean, I had responsibility for the front end of the business, but there were manufacturing people that did all those pieces.
Okay. Is that something that Dr. Schultz would know about?
Objection.
I can't speak on what Frank would know or not. I don't know.
Is Dr. Schultz, he was in charge of the manufacturing operation at that time?
He was.
Okay. What role did you have during the time that you were president of Specialty Pharmaceuticals Division in terms of the marketing messaging for the branded products?
So I had a group of people that had responsibility for marketing and sales on the branded side, just as I had a group of people that were responsible for the management of the generic business. They had responsibility for developing the strategies, the messaging, the launch, the overall approach to the marketplace. And then my role was to be involved and make sure that there was communication about what that looked like and how we wanted to approach the market, and then also to ensure that we were successfully prepared for launch.
Did you have final approval over any of the marketing messaging for the branded products?
The way the approval process works for the branded business is it goes through what was referred to as a promotional review committee, which is legal, compliance, regulatory, and medical, and they approve all the PRC, all the promotional materials. I don't approve those materials.
Did you have any role with respect to approving the marketing materials?
No.
Objection.
I'm sorry, your answer is no?
No.
Okay. What role do you currently play in the company with respect to the opioids litigation?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Do you have any role in the company with respect to the opioids litigation that's ongoing?
Objection.
No.
Are you aware of any litigation that was filed during the time that you were the president of the Specialty Pharmaceuticals Group?
I'm not aware, no.
What do you call it? Do you call it a group or business or division?
It's a subsidiary of the broader company.
What were the reasons that you decided to stop promoting Zartemis?
Objection.
So the product in development was focused on potentially an abuse deterrence formulation. And through the clinical development of the product, the goal was to eventually get an abuse deterrence claim on the product to add into the market as a potential part of the solution to kind of address the appropriate use of the product. That did not happen, number one, so we did end up not getting an abuse deterrence claim. The other issues were that we did decide to launch it because we had an approval, and we tried to make sure that it was positioned appropriately as it relates to a potential opportunity for patients who had hard time dealing with other forms of the product. And we stopped promoting it because the product was not able to penetrate the market and be successful.
How did you monitor the, as you call it, market penetration of Zartemis?
Objection.
So it was, we looked at performance metrics like you would normally. So things such as ideas of who the segmented physicians are that potentially were appropriate to write the product based on patients that could benefit from it. We also looked at prescription uptake based on those appropriate patient populations.
And where did you get that data from?
Third-party sources. I can't remember if it was IMS or some others, but it was third-party sources.
So the data that you got regarding the Zartemis prescriptions was prescription level data?
Objection.
Normally you look at prescription level data, both new prescriptions as well as total prescriptions. And you look at those across segmented physicians that you believe are appropriate to write the product based on where the patients are actually treated.
Okay, so you can determine from the data which doctors are writing prescriptions for Mallinckrodt products?
Objection.
Yes, we can. Yep.
And you could also determine which doctors are writing for products manufactured by other companies?
Objection.
So the challenge with this market is because it's so genericized, you don't really see who manufactures. It's just usually you see the chemical, the amount of the chemical that they're writing. So hydrocodone with acetaminophen or oxycodone or so forth, but we don't usually see the manufacturer per se unless it's another brand.
Okay. So for the branded products, you would see for each prescription that was written for the specific product, right?
For our data, yes. You can see their overall prescribing activity, but usually we just looked at what our prescribing activity was.
Okay. And could you see if somebody wrote a prescription for a generic, let's talk about Zartemis in particular, right? So Zartemis was a combination drug?
It was.
Okay, so what was in that?
It was a combination of oxycodone and acetaminophen.
Okay. So could you also see what physicians were writing prescriptions for generic oxycodone and acetaminophen combinations?
We saw we could see the full market potential, and we could see. I can't recall exactly, but there was a history of what they wrote, but we couldn't see specifically how that breakout went. But we saw the history of how the physicians wrote. Yes.
Okay, and you can see excuse me, let me start that again.
Sure.
During the time that you were the president of the specialty pharmaceuticals group, you could see which physicians were writing prescriptions for Mallinckrodt's branded product, including Zartemis at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Was Exalgo still in the market at that time?
I don't recall the exact timing. When I joined the company, Exalgo was at that back end of its life cycle. It was going to go off patent. One strength maintained exclusivity post the other ones losing patent protection, but we were separating ourselves from promoting that product. I want to say it was probably in 2000, I can't remember the exact date, but in the 2014 timeframe.
Okay. So when you first joined Mallinckrodt was still promoting Exalgo?
Yes, that's correct.
And was that under, were you in charge of that as well?
It was under the branded business, yes, it would have been my responsibility.
Okay. Was it the 32 milligram dose that they continued to promote for some period of time?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Was the company at that time monitoring the prescription level data for Exalgo?
I'm sure we had prescription level data of how the product was actually being written by physicians. That would be normal course of business.
Okay. You also were at one time receiving daily sales reports for both the branded opioids and the generic opioids, is that right?
Objection.
That is correct. We do see daily sales reports, yes.
Okay. Is that something that came to you during the entire time that you were the president of the specialty pharmaceuticals business?
Objection.
It came to the operating committee, came to members, myself included, yes.
Okay. You, are you aware that in 2017, Mallinckrodt entered into a settlement agreement with the Drug Enforcement Administration?
I'm aware of the settlement, not of the details because I was not running the business at the time, but I was aware of the settlement, yes.
Okay. Did you, you may have just answered my next question then. What role, if any, did you have in conjunction with the discussions with the Drug Enforcement Administration that ultimately led to that settlement agreement?
None.
Do you know who Michael Bryant Hicks is?
I do.
Who is he?
He's our former general counsel.
Okay, so Mr. Casey's predecessor?
That is correct, yes.
And he was the general counsel for Mallinckrodt LLC as well as Mallinckrodt PLC?
I don't know.
Objection.
I don't really know. I mean, I know he's the general counsel for the company. I don't know whether it was LLC, PLC, or how it was set up.
Okay. Alrighty. What role, if any, did Mark Trudeau have in formulating the messaging for Mallinckrodt's branded opioids, Artemis?
Objection.
As I mentioned earlier, Mark's role as this chief executive officer was not involved in the daily operations. He was more setting the strategy direction of the company, investor relations, board relations, those type of things. The operating committee, which I chaired, like I mentioned earlier, really had responsibility for the management of the business on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And the PRC, or the Promotional Review Committee, approved the messaging for the products that were used in front of customers.
Okay, would you from time to time present to Mr. Trudeau proposed messaging for Artemis?
Objection.
I don't recall whether we had conversations about it or not.
Are you from New Jersey?
I am. Is it that evident?
Well, I'm from New York originally, so
Okay. Born in Brooklyn, but raised in Jersey.
Okay.
So-
Which part of Brooklyn?
Flatbush.
I was born in Queens. Yeah, we'll put them together. Just, give me one of each. I'm going to hand you what we'll mark as collective exhibit number 2, which I believe to be an email and its attachment. The Bates numbers are MNK-T1_0000947867 and MNK-T1_0000947868. We'll mark that, both of those, as collective exhibit number 2. Let's have a clip. No? Okay. We'll deal with that on the break then. We've got more copies here coming.
Did you get a copy coming?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's pass that over to these guys.
Thank you.
There you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Did somebody sprinkle pepper down there or something?
It's that time of year.
Yeah. Okay, and you can take as much time as you need to review this, Mr. O'Neill. I'm going to ask you a few questions when you're ready.
Okay.
Okay. So exhibit number 2 is, first page is an email from you to Mark Trudeau dated December the 13th of 2013, 7:52 p.m. The subject line is Artemis messaging. And you said in that email, I've attached one slide that represents our messaging for Artemis XR. And does this appear, the second page of Exhibit 2, to be that slide?
I don't really recall the email, but clearly, I mean, I'm looking at it, so it came from me. The message, the outline of the slide certainly seems to fit the email, yes.
Okay. You said here, for purposes of next week, I would recommend that the focus be on the onset you expect, the duration they deserve. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, do you have any idea what you were referring to there when you said for the purposes of next week?
I don't recall.
Okay. And if you go further down, you said, as we spoke about at the EC, we will be testing this messaging with physicians and payers. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, what is the EC?
It's the executive committee of the organization. It's Mark's direct reports.
Okay, so at the time in 2013, who was on the executive committee?
It would be better off probably going by roles, but Mark obviously was on it, the CFO, the general counsel, myself as the head of the branded business, and the generic business. I'm sure Dr. Scholes, who was the head of manufacturing, as well as our head of science and technology, and I probably missed a couple people, but those were the major pieces.
Okay, and during this time period, the time period where you were the president of specialty pharmaceuticals, how often did the executive committee meet?
I don't recall the exact timing, but probably once a month at least. And there were different topics on the agenda.
During the time when you were president of the specialty pharmaceuticals business, did you attend board of directors meetings?
I'd be in certain sections of those board directors meetings. I wasn't in there the whole time. It's usually those things that were relevant to my presence.
Okay. Would you attend every board of directors meeting?
I don't recall if I attended every one, but if I was on the agenda, I'd be there.
Where did those occur?
At this time, I believe they were occurring in Dublin.
How often did those occur?
Objection.
I don't recall the exact time, maybe once a quarter, 4 times a year maybe.
Do you still attend those board of directors meetings?
I do.
Have you attended those meetings during the entire time that you've worked at Mallinckrodt?
I have. Not all of them, but like I said, when it's relevant for me to be there.
Okay. Have they always taken place in Dublin since you've been involved?
Initially Dublin, now they take place in London.
Does the entire executive committee attend the board meetings?
Now, yes. We are always there because there's usually chances to interact with the board, answer specific questions. But yes, most of the EC is there.
Was there a time where that wasn't true?
In the beginning, we would go based on whether the topic required us to be there. Mm-hmm. Now we tend to go to every one. Doesn't mean we're in the meeting the whole time, but we're there.
Okay. When did that change?
I don't recall the exact timing.
Was it recent?
I'd have to speculate. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay. So let's go back to exhibit number 2. This phrase or phrases, the onset you expect, the duration they deserve. Did you come up with that?
No, my expectation would have come from my marketing team.
Okay. Do you have a marketing background?
I do.
What was your undergraduate degree in?
Finance.
And did you get a graduate degree?
I did.
From Seton Hall as well?
I did.
Okay. What was your graduate degree in?
Marketing.
When was that?
My graduate degree was in 97, I believe.
How about your undergrad?
92.
So PJ days?
Yeah. I got my undergrad was from Montclair State. My graduate was from Seton Hall.
Got it. Okay. Those were heady times for their basketball program.
It was.
Was this slide that's attached to exhibit number 2, was that something that the marketing department prepared, do you think?
I can't remember who prepared it, but it would have definitely come from the brand team, yes.
Okay. From the brand team, did you?
Yeah,
say?
from the marketing group, yeah.
Okay. What is the brand team?
So the way we manage our products is there's usually a team of individuals that manage the business, and those that we refer to as brand teams. They usually have people from marketing, they have people from finance, from medical, other people that help drive the strategy for the business.
I see.
And they're at a brand level.
Okay. Do you have any medical training?
I do not.
This on exhibit 2, the messaging recap is Zartemis XR is the first and only oxycodone HCI/APAP combination for acute pain with immediate and extended release analgesia, providing fast-acting and long-lasting continuous pain relief with the benefit of 12-hour dosing for patients. Is that something that the brand team came up with?
They would have tested that, they would have developed it, and it would have had to been clear through the promotional review committee that I spoke about earlier, which include medical, regulatory, and legal.
Got it. Do you know why you were sending this information to Mark Trudeau in December of 2013?
I don't recall exactly why, but if you go back to where the company was, we had just spun, we had just become public from our spin out from Covidian, and this was could be our first launch. So there was a lot of interest in what we were going. It was more informational than anything else.
Okay. What was your role with respect to the spin from Covidian?
I joined after that was completed.
Okay.
That was completed in July of 13. I joined in September.
Do you have any legal training?
I do not.
What role with respect to, I'm talking about Zartemis here, what role with respect to the discussions with FDA over labeling did you play?
I was not involved in the active discussions with the FDA. That would have been our regulatory team. I was aware of the discussions and the dialogue, but I was not actively involved.
Okay. Was there a point person for the company to deal with the FDA on that issue?
It would have been our head of regulatory at the time, which I believe was Mark Mallinckrodt, I think his last name was. I can't remember. He's not with the company anymore.
When you, since you've been with the company, has Mallinckrodt promoted roxicodone?
Not that I'm aware, no. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Have you heard of roxicodone?
I have, yes.
Is that a product that the company still sells?
I believe it's part of the generic business. I'm not aware of how it's handled. It's not part of my responsibility.
Was that part of your responsibility when you were president of the specialty pharmaceuticals business?
I don't know whether it was in the portfolio at that point in time either. It's a relatively small product. If it was, I don't really recall.
All right, we'll mark as exhibit number 3. MNK T1_0000953264.
Brian, can I have that? The water.
Yeah, if you need a break at any time.
I'm okay. I just need a little water. That's all.
Okay, here's the witness copy. Thanks. take as much time as you need to review that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about the email on the bottom first. This is from you to somebody named Todd Killian and Stacy Chick. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, who was Todd Killian?
Todd Killian at the time was the head of my market access team.
What was the function of the market access team?
So their primary responsibility was interacting directly with payers, both private and public payers.
Bless you.
Okay, and Stacy Chick, who is she?
At the time, she was the head of the sales organization.
You said in this email, hope you guys had a good weekend, as I have had a chance to think through the various topics from the last cabinet meeting. Do you see that?
I do.
What was the cabinet?
So the cabinet was myself, members of my direct reports, commercial leadership, as well as medical and some other people that were monitoring the launch of the product and determining how it was going and what, if anything, we should be thinking differently about.
Okay. And that was different from these other groups that we've talked about so
Yeah,
far.
this was a very this is a group that was meeting more frequently than the OC. The OC probably monthly. This was probably weekly.
Okay. During the time period that you were president of the Specialty Pharmaceuticals Group, was the company monitoring pharmacy level data as well on its products?
I don't recall whether we were or not. I don't remember.
Do you know what I mean when I say pharmacy level data?
I'm assuming you mean dispense data at the pharmacy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, I don't remember if we did or not.
Is that something the company does today?
It's different today. So the business that we have now is a specialty pharmaceutical business, and it's handled through SPs, specialty pharmacies, not retail pharmacies.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see that data as part of our network. But yes, we do see it. But I don't know if we were monitoring pharmacy data here or not.
Did you have access? Did the company have access to pharmacy level data back when you were the president of the Specialty Pharmaceuticals Group?
There were third-party providers that had that. IMS was one. I can't remember who the other one was. But yes, there were third-party data providers.
Okay, and
I'm sure, like anything else, it was probably there, but I don't remember.
Okay. Okay, going back to exhibit number 3, the first bullet point there, you said our overall approach to the VA/DOD, that's Veterans Administration and Department of Defense.
That is correct.
Okay. This is a market that would seem to be in need of a solution like Zartemis XR. The policy team under leadership of Derek Nathan is currently digging into the messaging for policymakers in DC. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, what were you talking about there?
So when you think about vets and you think about some of the challenges that they have with pain management, both active as well as non-active, there was a real opportunity potentially to place the product in that provided more sustainable pain relief without changing the dosing, and it was more aligned with potentially helping these patients reach a better outcome.
Okay, what was the policy team?
So at the time we had and we still do have a team down in Washington, D.C. that works on public policy as well as government affairs, and Derek's part of that team.
Okay, and at some point you were in charge of the Political Action Committee for Mallinckrodt, is that right?
The PAC, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you still in charge of that?
I chair the board for the PAC, yes I do.
Is there any connection between the PAC and the policy team?
No.
Still under bullet point number 1 of exhibit 3, you said, Todd, how do we handle the message into Heinz or at the VISN level? Do you see
Right,
that?
I
What
do.
does that mean?
So Hines is the center of the VA. It's where most clinical decisions are made, and these are people who usually drive formulary decisions. The VISNs, or the VISNs, they're the regional structure underneath Hines that makes local decisions for the VAs.
Why was it important to get a message to those groups?
Because they're ultimately going to make the decision on whether they make the product available to the patients that could potentially benefit from it. So you wanted to share with them the clinical messaging, the opportunity and understanding of the product, and potentially who the appropriate patients are that could benefit from it.
Okay. You went on to say in Exhibit 3, we obviously will need to go out and recruit a top-notch AD to handle this segment. What is an AD?
Account director?
Ah, okay. Did that ever happen?
I don't recall whether we hired somebody or not. That's a specific, that's a specific skill set that you go out to try to find, but I don't know if we did or not. I'm assuming we did, but I don't remember.
Did the market access team report to you at this time?
We did.
The next bullet point in Exhibit 3, differentiation in front of the prescriber. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, what is differentiation in front of the prescriber?
So one of the challenges in the branded business is getting time in front of potential physicians because they see patients, their days are very busy, you want to make that as productive as possible, and they get a lot of people that are trying to get their time. So the question is, how do you actually stand out from that, and how do you potentially offer them a solution that they don't see? So it's really making yourself stand out versus your competition.
I see. So one of the challenges for a branded product like Zartemis XR would be to explain to prescribers why that product is new or different from existing products?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
But also getting the time in front of them.
Right. With respect to a drug like Zartemis, it also had generic competition, is that right?
Yeah, there were generic versions of the product. Not of specifically that formulation, but of oxycodone and acetaminophen, yes.
Okay. And what was the messaging, if you remember, that was intended to differentiate Zartemis from either the generics or other branded products that are similar to it?
I don't recall the exact messaging, but I think what you shared with me earlier about the duration and the dosing was probably part of that.
Yeah, that 12-hour dose that you talked about earlier?
Yes.
Okay. What, if any, was the Mallinckrodt messaging about the risk of addiction with respect to Zartemis?
Objection.
I don't recall the specific messaging as it relates to the addiction piece of the messaging. I don't recall what it was.
Was there a discussion in the Zartemis messaging about the risk of addiction?
Objection.
I'm sure, as I mentioned earlier, through the PRC, or the Promotional Review Committee, that it had to be a balanced message based on the data. We would not put something out that didn't have some sort of balance to it. I just don't recall what the specifics were.
Okay. What is your understanding today about the risk of addiction with prescription opioids?
Objection.
So, based on what I know, there is clearly an opioid crisis in place, and the opportunity for appropriate utilization of this product is really the most important piece. Mm-hmm. There are patients that live with pain, and opioids represent a significant opportunity for them to manage the pain, but like anything else, it has to be used appropriately with the right patient.
Is there a risk of addiction for patients taking prescription opioids?
Objection.
I'm not a scientist. It's hard for me to say. I know that there's an opioid issue.
Okay. Have you ever heard that there's a risk of addiction with prescription opioids?
Like I said, I know there's an opioid crisis, specifically in the inappropriate use of the product. Yes.
Okay. Have you ever read the labels for any of the Mallinckrodt opioid products?
Not since I've been in the business, which is 4 years ago.
Back when you were the president of the specialty pharmaceuticals business, did you read product labels for the opioid products?
I'm sure I did.
Do you recall anything about the risk of addiction in there?
I'm sure there was a risk associated in the label. I don't remember the exact language.
What do you know about the opioid crisis? You mentioned that you know there's a crisis.
Objection.
I know that there is a significant concern related to the inappropriate use of the products.
Is there any risk of addiction with prescription opioids even when they are used appropriately?
Objection.
Again, it's hard for me to speculate on that. I don't know that answer.
Have you ever known anyone addicted to opioids?
I have not.
Ever met anyone who's addicted to opioids?
I have not.
Okay, let's mark as exhibit number 4.
Sure.
MNK-T1_000944-036. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. So this is, exhibit number 4 is an email from you to a group of people dated November the 5th of 2013. It's to somebody named Sanjeev Luther. Do you see that?
I do.
Who is Mr. Luther?
So at the time, Sanjeev was the head of business analytics, forecasting and such.
Okay, and what is that?
He has responsibility for the team that does all the business analytics on the KPIs, forecasting, all those issues.
What's KPI?
I'm sorry, key performance indicators, scorecards, those type of things.
So would Mr. Luther be reviewing information such as prescription level data?
In his role, he would understand it, yes, and he would probably see it.
Okay. Is he still with the company?
He is not.
Do you know where he is now?
I do not.
Okay. This is also sent to somebody named Joe Duarte. Do you see that?
I do.
Who is he?
At the time, Joe was the head of market access prior to Todd.
Okay. And Melissa Falcone?
I do see that, yeah.
Yeah,
Melissa
who-
at the time was the brand director.
Okay. She's a marketing person then?
She is.
Is she still with the company?
She is.
Is she still in, does she still report to you?
No, and she's in a different role now. She reports to the current head of market access for the organization.
Who is that?
Sandy LaRoe,
Is that a man or a woman?
woman.
Okay. So the subject line here is Zartemis XR ADT impact. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and this is sent, you sent it with high importance, company confidential. Why was that?
Because it referenced specifically issues relating to our ongoing negotiations with the FDA. And that was a confidential negotiations that potentially could lead to different thinking about the product.
Okay. You said here we are looking at various scenarios concerning the ongoing label negotiations with the FDA. One of the scenarios is that we do not receive any mention of ADT within the label. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, what is ADT?
Abuse deterrence. Abuse deterrence.
Okay.
Technology. ADT is abuse deterrence technology.
Okay. And you were being kept apprised at this time of the negotiations with FDA?
Progress in our discussions with the FDA regarding that, yes.
Okay, but you weren't involved
No,
personally?
I was not actively involved in the negotiations.
Okay. A couple sentences down, you said, I believe that the major point of differentiation will be our ability to gain access in a non-prior authorized third-tier position. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, what did you mean by that?
It's a formulary position with payers. So if you think about, and at this time, it's changed a little bit. At this time, copays or what the patient pays were defined by tiers. So tier 1 was generic, tier 2 usually was a preferred brand, tier 3 was a non-preferred brand. And prior authorization was the amount of management that the payer would place on top of a specific utilization of a brand. And what we were communicating based on the language here, and I can only speculate because I don't really remember this, just based on what I'm reading, is that it was important for the product not to have prior authorization on it and allow it to sit in a third tier position, which would have been a little more expensive to the patient, but not prior authorized.
Okay, why was it being prior authorized an issue?
Because if you think about the way payers manage formularies, they step at it or they force patients to fail on other products. And more than likely, again, this is speculation based on what I'm reading, is that the challenge would be that if the product was prior authorized, the patient would have to fail on multiple other forms of the generic before they get access to the product.
Okay, and if a product required prior authorization, that would mean that a physician would have to call to the payer and say, I need authorization to make this prescription for this patient?
That's one way, or documentation or some sort of documentation.
Okay. And that would likely have the effect of reducing the number of prescriptions?
Objection.
Again, it would potentially impact how many patients get access to the product because they may not actually ever get access to it because the physician may not be willing to write it.
Okay. Prior authorization is something that the physician's office would have to get, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oops. All right, let's mark as the next numbered exhibit MNK-T1_000 280-6634. That'd be exhibit number 5. It's actually a 2-page exhibit. Let me redo that. So exhibit number 5 is MNK-T1_000 280-6634 and 6635. Oops. I'm told lunch is here, so after we finish talking about this document, we can take a break and eat. 5.
Okay.
Okay, the top email here is from you to Stacy Chick with a copy to somebody named Mike Patterson. Do you see that?
I do.
Who is Mr. Patterson?
At the time, Mike Patterson was my chief of staff.
What is that role?
Responsibility for execution, project management, making sure things were moving the way they need to move.
Okay. Is he still with the company?
He's not.
Where is he now?
I do not know.
When did he leave the company?
A couple years ago.
Do you know, is he still in the pharmaceutical business?
I do not know.
Okay. This email is dated April 11th of 2014, and your email here on the top is to Stacy. It says, Stacy, thanks. I would ask you to follow up with Todd on this issue. There is no reason to have our demand generation minimized by dropping the ball at the retailer level. Do you see that?
I do.
Hey, what did you mean by that?
So, if you think about how many retail pharmacies there are in the country, Getting a new product stocked at the retailer when it's launched is very difficult because they have limited shelf space. They're only willing to take certain things. And what the concern was, if we were able to generate interest in the product, that when the prescription was filled, the pharmacy wouldn't have the product to fill the prescription. That was the concern.
Okay. And what did you mean when you used the term demand generation?
Again, going specifically to the physicians with the right messaging to identify the appropriate patient and generating prescriptions activity.
Okay. And that was one of the goals of the sales staff?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Was this issue ever rectified?
I don't recall whether it was or not, but clearly there was effort to make sure the product was available based on the language in the email.
And at some point, we'll look at this email later, but at some point you were suggesting that Mallinckrodt should guarantee sales to the pharmacies. So in other words, if they stocked the Zartemis and it didn't sell, then they wouldn't be charged for it. Is that right?
I don't recall the detail on that.
Okay. All right. We'll look at some emails later on that. Okay. Well, let's put this aside and eat lunch, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, remove your microphones, please. The time is 12 p.m. off the record.